Well, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10, Hollywood blockbusters in Seoul. The next iteration of the Avengers movie franchise started filming last weekend here in the nation. Find out about its impact on the country and on the filmmaking community. Up next on After 10. Stay with us. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10 to talk about the movie industry.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So Hollywood has come to Korea again, and they're filming on a big scale a blockbuster movie, The Avengers, and I guess it's the sequel, Age of Ultron. What is it about the Avengers franchise that makes it so popular?
Well, I think it's just the fact that, these are characters who are very familiar to both audiences around the world and fans of the original comic books. And The Avengers is the film where they all come together. And so Captain America, the Hulk, Iron Man, all these characters who we've seen in other movies and we've, developed this kind of affection for, I guess. Then they all come together and they fight on the same team in this film.
And these characters are played by some very heavy-hitting Hollywood stars as well.
Yeah, definitely. Robert Downey Jr. is in the film, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo. It has a very large cast, and a lot of A-list stars in that cast, and so just putting the thing together, I think, is quite an accomplishment.
Right, so they've started filming already, and they're still here in Seoul, and about 20 minutes of the film, I believe, are going to be in Seoul.
Yeah.
And they're going to be filming on Mapo Bridge, the Sebae Tungdungsam floating island, and the digital media city. What kind of scenes will take place at these locations?
Well, probably big scenes of destruction, like we've come to expect in a lot of these superhero movies. Typically, the finale at the end is this huge conflict between the antagonist and then the good guys, and so we can expect that a lot of Seoul will be destroyed, perhaps, in these 20 minutes.
Right. So the government expects that the benefits economically of this filming would be about 2 trillion won, about $2 billion. Some people say that's overinflated. Where does this figure come from? And what are the benefits economically of when a foreign production company comes into a local market to film? Yeah,
I think it's undeniable that there are economic benefits. And those benefits are a combination of measurable benefits and then benefits that you can only kind of estimate. And so, the more abstract ones have to do with things like, the brand power, the brand recognition of Korea as a country, and added tourism. We might expect that this film might make people a little bit more aware of Korea and so more likely to travel. But on a much more concrete level, it provides jobs to a lot of people in Korea during the time that they're there. Crew members get a chance to work on this film that's on a huge scale, much bigger than any local film. And so they gain new skills, and perhaps this will indirectly help the Korean film industry in the sense that, these crew members will learn how to do things that they, weren't able to do before.
And talk about some of the business arrangements of such a deal when a foreign production company comes into a city, works with the city government, and gets sanctions and approvals to stop major traffic lines and use public spaces. There's a clause where you have to return 30% of the fee. What is that all about? I guess people who have commented on our boards have wondered about that.
Yeah, this is a thing that it didn't used to exist in Korea, and basically different countries around the world and also different states within the US, they offer this tax rebate as an incentive to lure these film shoots into their region. And so, for example, the state of Louisiana in the US offers a 30% tax rebate, just like Korea does. And so this is a fairly generous incentive. But the thing is that, there's so much, you wouldn't think it from the amount of money that Hollywood blockbusters earn, but there's tremendous economic pressure on Hollywood producers. And so if there's something they can do to save money, then they will change the location in the film to accommodate that. And so basically the Korean government stepped up and said, we're willing to give you this rebate because we think that on balance it's still going to be good for Korea. And so it's a bit of a risk, but I think that in my opinion it's a smart move to do that.
So other people, citizens, have expressed, on the one hand, gratitude that the production will be filmed in Seoul, but then on the other hand, people are very concerned that major marquee landmarks of Seoul will be blown up.
That's right.
How does a local community respond to that, and how do filmmakers work with the local citizens to make sure that their city is not going to be misrepresented?
Yeah, it's a really funny thing. I think that, and in some ways, the issue of publicity for cinema, sometimes it's counterintuitive in the sense that if you think of all those disaster movies where something afflicts the entire world, and then you see like Paris go up in explosions, and then New York, and then most people would say that this probably doesn't have a directly negative benefit on the tourism, because when people are planning a trip, they don't think, well, in Avengers it was destroyed, and so I better not go there.
Right, it's in the imagination.
Yeah, and in the case of Korea, it's different from Paris or Rome in the sense that Korea is not really as well known to people in Europe and North America. They may not think of it very much, and so the idea is just to, regardless of whether they're scenes of destruction or these kind of very pleasant scenes that you might see in a romantic comedy, just to get Korea into viewers' minds, and that might encourage them to become more interested in Korea, maybe eventually come to visit.
So what was the appeal of Seoul to the Avengers production team?
It was probably a mix of very practical considerations, and then also the fact that it is somewhat new. I think that a big blockbuster, they're always looking for new locations, and there hasn't been a blockbuster in this scale shot in Seoul, and so it will be something new for the Avengers movie. But probably, knowing the way that producers' minds work, probably the big incentive was economic, and that the 30% rebate probably was the deciding factor.
Through a rebate or a coupon, they can work it into the script. Well, how does Seoul stand in the storyline?
Well, the storyline, the screenplay itself is kept as secret as possible, and they're trying to keep, as much of a lid on the storyline and everything that's going on. But there are 20 minutes of the film, the film that will be devoted to shots in Seoul, and so, yeah, it's too early to say whether it presents Seoul in a very positive way or a negative way. I think that perhaps the people in the government who approved this project had access to much more information about the script than the general public does.
But we do know that Korean actress Kim Soo-hyun will be featured in the film as a doctor, I believe. Yeah,
that's right. And I think that in some ways it's a great opportunity for her, but also perhaps this is a gesture towards the Korean audience. And a lot of the citizens will suffer some inconveniences while this film is being shot. But when the film is finally released, they can not only see scenes from the city, but they'll also be kind of a local actress in the film.
Iron Man flies above the Cheonggyecheon Stream. Avengers heroes in convenience stores and eating kimbap at a restaurant in Seoul. Internet and social network services are overflowing with parodies of the Avengers heroes who are posing in front of locations in Seoul. Hollywood blockbuster The Avengers has shown its powerful influence, making headlines even before its release. Much of the details are being kept under wraps, stimulating the imaginations of the Korean people.
The bridge closures and then the traffic snarls that happen because of the shutdown of certain key routes. How do people adjust to that?
Yeah, it is really hard, and that's one reason why it is hard when these big productions come into cities, and certain cities are unwilling to do the kind of things that Seoul has been able to do, and And it is kind of a trial run, because if it turns out that this is so inconvenient that it causes major, major problems for people, then the government will have to rethink their policy of, accepting these really big productions and then
So
offering
this is
them
on a
this kind
scale
of traffic
that Seoul
control.
hasn't seen before.
No, it isn't. This is completely new. It's something that it is a trial run in a sense on both sides. Seoul will see whether it can.
Well, how is it bigger? Because we see not infrequently movies being shot. I mean, I've driven past one of those car scenes on like one of the bridges,
Sure, yeah.
and the crew is there, but normal people can just continue along their way. What's different about this production?
Well, I mean, just the scale of it. I mean, when you think that they shut down Mapo Bridge, I mean, this major, major bridge in the center of Seoul that, both logistically and also in a sense symbolically, it's like the very center of the city, and then to shut it down and then to give it over to a foreign film production
Right.
for the day.
Well, what are they doing there? I mean, I thought most of it is done like with computer graphics.
It is, but I mean, you need to shoot on the actual location in order to give it really kind of a sense of realism and yeah, so they'll be adding a lot of the effects and the explosions by computer graphics, but it is much more authentic if you can shoot on location.
They're also blocking off these areas to keep the public out,
Yes.
to keep, like you said, some of the storyline and what's happening in the movie secret. But why is it different? Why is it a different culture? Because in Korea, a lot of times the movie makers don't mind if citizens are taking pictures and uploading them on social networking services for the promotion effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it points to the different situations faced by these two different films. And so a local filmmaker, most likely their film is not very known by the general audience, and they want people to get to know about it. And so they're very happy to have people visit the set, snap pictures, upload them, and they're comfortable with the fact that they can't really control what type of pictures are taken and what sort of content goes up, because there is some benefit to them. I mean, with the Avengers, they don't really need any more name recognition. Everybody knows what it is. And so for them, the key thing is to control the marketing. And these marketing specialists, they run very sophisticated marketing campaigns, and they don't want images from the set being uploaded that they can't control.
Well, let's say that somebody found a loophole into the general vicinity of the set and they took a picture and uploaded it. Is it illegal, not allowed? Are they going to get in big trouble?
Well, they could potentially get in trouble. I mean, it's not the sort of thing the police would come and arrest you for, but if the film company could prove that they had some kind of economic damage as the result of this, then perhaps they could sue you. I doubt it would happen, but it is possible.
So Seoul really pulled out all the stops to invite the Avengers film crew, and that had some local filmmakers feeling a bit uncomfortable because they haven't seen the same type of a welcoming gesture. How is the local film community responding?
I mean, it is mixed, to be fair. I mean, there's some voices of criticism and other people who do feel somewhat excited about this project. I think that what this whole situation highlights is this huge gap between Hollywood filmmaking and Korean filmmaking, and there is just the difference in size between a Hollywood budget and a Korean budget. You're reminded of that as you see this whole process taking place. And
what is the average budget of a Korean film and an average budget of a blockbuster from Hollywood?
The average Korean film is about $3 million US, and a Korean blockbuster would be about 10 million or up to 15 million maybe. Whereas in the US, 200 million, 250 million.
200 million versus 10 to 15 million in terms of the budget.
Sure, yeah.
That's being spent.
Yeah, and so you can't really compare them. On the other hand, I think that if this had been happening 15 years ago, then I think you would have seen much more of a protest from the local filmmakers and a lot more hurt feelings. Whereas now the local film industry is quite successful, making films on a smaller scale. And within Korea, local films often outperform big Hollywood blockbusters. And so I think there's less criticism than we would have gotten maybe in the past.
So what is tied to this recent boom in Asian locations in a lot of these big Hollywood films?
I mean, I think it partly it comes out of the fact that a lot of people view Asia as kind of this big market for the future. Certainly if you look at trends in movie going, China, India, these are markets that are growing very quickly. And so Hollywood knows that if they want to be successful in the future, that they need to make movies that appeal to Asians.
So they put Asian actors and actresses in there, and they do get more opportunities this way.
They do, and they've even gone so far as, like, in the recent Iron Man film, to shoot additional scenes with Chinese actors in Chinese and to insert that into the film for the Chinese release. And so if you happen to be in China when you were watching that film, you got a slightly different film than the rest of the world.
Oh, right. And I've heard that even scripts are changed to change the nationalities of the villains.
Sure.
From, instead of it being a Chinese villain, they'll make them North Korean these days.
Right. That did happen in a recent film involving a terrorist attack on the White House. And so even though it's perhaps a little bit less plausible that North Koreans would attack the White House in that way, I think that the producers were thinking about the bottom line and their potential audience.
No movie theaters in North Korea that they can release in.
Yeah, that's right. If North Korea bans the film, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to show it anyway.
So what are some of the other attractive features of filming in Seoul? Do you think, well, first of all, they chose some of the right locations to feature in this film?
Yeah, I think that, a few years ago I had the chance to kind of go around together with a Hollywood producer. He was from 20th Century Fox, and he was looking around Korea, thinking about the potential for shooting a film there. And Korea, I think that the benefits to Korea are things like, Seoul itself is a really interesting city, and so I think that it's not surprising that the Avengers wanted to shoot in Seoul because in terms of location, that is one strength of Korea. I think that in terms of practical issues like working with crews and the overall level of professionalism, he said that he was very impressed with the fact that Koreans would tell you up front what they can do and what they can't do. Whereas in other countries that just say, we can do everything, and then later you find out that they can't. On the other hand, I think that when you compare Korea to China, there's less of a range of locations, like sound stages, places where you can shoot these films. The infrastructure isn't quite as developed as it is in China. And so, the Korean government has been working to build new, sound stages for shooting on set and doing other things to help develop the infrastructure here. But it is a complicated thing.
Well, how is the Korean government trying to market itself as trying to market Seoul as a city or other parts of Korea as a location where filming should happen?
Basically, there are different organizations in each city, and so there's the Seoul Film Commission and then the Busan Film Commission. And they do a lot of work meeting with producers around the world. They go to different industry fairs around the world, and they promote their city. They talk about, for example, the city's willingness to shut down bridges in order to attract a Hollywood production, because not all cities around the world are willing to do that. And through this long, slow process, they're able to convince producers that maybe it's worthwhile to give a chance. But the real thing is that after the Avengers finishes shooting here, the producers and the crew are going to go back to Hollywood and talk about their experience. And if they had a good experience, then we can expect that perhaps more Hollywood productions will take a close look at Korea in the future.
So if a romantic comedy were to be filmed in Korea by a Hollywood production company, what are some of the top key location sites that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, Insadong is something that, it's an area that's kind of feels typically Korean, and, there are the palaces. But also I think Korea has this great youth culture, and if there's a way that the film could capture the youth culture of Seoul, more so than any particular location, then I think that would be like the real attraction.
So Avengers, of course, is a movie we recognize as a huge blockbuster, but you yourself personally are working on a new project honoring independent Korean films.
That's right, just this week. Everybody's talking about the Avengers and the shoot there, but we also held this event this week that is basically similar to the Independent Spirit Awards in the US. It's an awards ceremony to recognize Korean independent films.
And what's it called? The
It's
organization?
the Wildflower Film Awards Korea.
So how many films did you honor?
There were 7 awards given in total, and so awards like Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress.
And who are some of the award recipients?
Let's see, we had, for example, Best Actress was Chung Eun-chae from the movie Nobody's Daughter Haewon. Best Actor is a lesser-known actor. His name is Nam Yeon-woo, and he was in the movie Fatal. And then the top prize went to a movie called Jisoo, which is a black and white film that won a prize at Sundance last year.
So why the emphasis on the independent films?
Yeah, I think just, there's a lot of focus on the big commercial films in Korea. And, Korea's making a lot of blockbusters as well, and they're being very successful at doing it. But at the same time, there are a huge number of smaller films being made. And so myself and a number of other critics and people got together and we decided to try to start up something new that would shine more of a spotlight on independent filmmakers.
And what is the essence of the independent filmmakers these days? Is there a running theme?
The biggest thing is just there are huge numbers of independent films being made, and in a really diverse, range of styles and subject matter. These are not films that are really being financed by outside companies. In a lot of cases, directors just take some of their own money and they shoot a film, but the results are sometimes really quite impressive. And so,
because we also hear that argument in other film markets where the blockbusters get all the attention and the financing, they can't make these artsy films. Well, what is a Korean artsy film?
Yeah, I think that, basically, they tend to be very low budget in Korea. It's difficult to get funding to make a somewhat bigger, more ambitious film that is very arty in character, because just the economics don't really support that. And so filmmakers try to do the best they can with a very low budget. And, a lot of crew members and actors are willing to work for free. And but the result is often really impressive. And so my personal feeling is when, you struggle to make a film and then you end up making a film that really is quite interesting, that we need to recognize that and kind of shine a spotlight on that.
So they could go work on the Avengers and make some money and then work on some of these independent films.
That's true. A lot of Korean directors they start with independent films and then they go on to make bigger films in the future, or even just go back and forth between the two of them.
All right, well, Darcy, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the Korean film industry.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Join us again. We'll see you next time.
We will continue to do our best to improve our show based on the perspective of our viewers. Always feel free to leave us any comments, great ideas, or suggestions you wish to share with us.